Well, Dr. Churchill, we are in quite the situation, I would say pretty much on the nose, to reconvene here on what would Churchill do, being your legendary, iconic grandfather. And we have a lot to unpack here, being that Trump, I feel, really took a page quite literally out of the Churchill playbook, it seems, in this strategic move here to attack Iran, this ruthless regime that has been open, very, very blatantly open about wanting to annihilate the United States, freedom, democracy, the West, everything that we are about. And the Ayatollah is dead. There are celebrations in the streets, there are protests in the streets. And, I say the Churchill playbook because, we both know that this was very much a move that perhaps needed to be done, but was very much against the grain and the machine, right? Whereas all the presidents before Trump, be it Biden, even Obama, what have you, would be the equivalent of like a Neville Chamberlain, right? In the case of Churchill, kind of, don't play nice, don't rock the boat, only for these again vicious, evil regimes to just come in and take us out, right? What could go wrong? So, really taking the situation by the horns, if you will. So I have to imagine for you, watching this all play out has to be surreal, given that it very much closely parallels to Churchill in World War II. So talk about that. I think it goes without saying what would Churchill do in this moment, but go ahead and expand on that because at the end, I do have a bookend for another what would Churchill do. So yeah, tell us where you're at, what you think he would do. Again, kind of goes without saying, but
Thank you, Taylor. This is a wonderful introduction. And let's use that as a segue into today's reality. Today's reality is that the regime in Iran is falling apart.
mm-hmm.
Today's reality, whether it's in the news or not, is that the people of Iran, they start feeling the winds of freedom. Today's reality is that the Persian women, these wonderful mothers, sisters, daughters, they feel somewhat liberated to go out into the streets without the hijab, without the abiyah, without having to cover themselves and prostrate themselves in front of the revolutionary guards, those dictators and the
Yeah,
ayatollahs who have taken their blood out for 4 or even 5 decades in the last. We do
yeah,
know, we do know today that as we forecast and advised our leader of the free world and the leader of the United States, Donald Trump, and as it's evidenced by our previous discussions, that he took our counsel and he decided to act. And he decided to act knowing that history was written by the victors so many years ago only because there was so much toil, so much blood, so many millions of lives lost. And we are talking about the Second World War that
mm-hmm.
resulted in a grand total of 120 million of lives, of souls lost to the wind and the whims of Adolf Hitler and his counterparts in the rest of the world who believed in the same dictatorial darkness, the Italian fascists, the German Nazis, the Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
dictatorial forces, and many other allies, some of them forgotten, some of them not, even the Argentinians and the Turks and the Spaniards and so many others who thought that by causing into submission
Right,
the human spirit, they can win.
right,
So
right.
Winston Churchill suggested during the time of Neville Chamberlain, after the failure of the Munich, agreement, he
Yep.
said, and he actually suggested this in earnest, to assassinate Hitler for the atrocities he had committed against humanity already. And the English people chose not to. But I'm so gratified now that President Trump, he chose to act. And by assassinating the supreme leader of Iran, he caused the collapse of that house of
Yeah.
cards that is called the Iranian Mujahideen Revolution of the Ayatollahs.
I know it's a very, very controversial move. And I'm not gonna lie, look, for me as a woman, as a Jewish woman, As a lover of democracy and freedom, right? I very much I knew that the threat, it's not fear mongering or war mongering. They were, like I said, out in broad daylight for years about this, right? The threat on us, and as it was existential, right, and imminent. Um, and you're exactly right. There was, even again, like going up against back then what would have been the Neville Chamberlain, all this sort of complicit, let's just negotiate, which we saw, the Biden administration, like we'd seen this. And what your grandfather understood was why for them to just take us out. What is that going to get us? What do we do? Why for us to hand over the power for them to just take us out? Like they're not going to stop. Hitler was not going to stop. Iran was not going to stop. So, what do people say there? Because this is really, especially for Trump's core base, this is going to have them really split. Because I understand there are people who said, "What happened? You promised us no more wars." So, what would you say to them that maybe they're not getting, that they don't understand? Again, that your grandfather understood, that you understand about this situation.
Thank you. And the pivotal thing here is you cannot negotiate with a tiger when
Yeah.
your head is in its mouth. These are the words of Winston Churchill. And that's when he decided that it would have been far more profitable that they had assassinated early on the enemy, the head of the snake, by killing Adolf Hitler. And they failed to do it. So then it was too late. Once they were embroiled in war, then he had to choose the same thing. And he said, this is a just war. And the same thing goes for Donald Trump. The president perceived that this is a just war. And there is a huge distinction between any kind of frivolous war versus a just war. A just war is morality given by God that dictates that we have to protect the innocent. And that's what Donald Trump did, and that's what he's engaged to. And I do believe that he will allow the change of regime through their own people of Iran without having to put American people on the ground. And God willing, this is going to play out exactly as you forecast. The people are already on the streets celebrating, and they're going to clobber that regime, into pieces, and eventually they'll be liberated. And as they say there, inshallah, this shall pass, and there will be peace again. Thank you,
I
Taylor,
I've
for being
yeah,
on the spot.
I've already seen, I don't know about you, but women, you know, shedding their burqas, and it gives me chills. To see the immediate sense of, freedom and liberation. And I want to ask you honestly, right? Because I think I mentioned this about your grandfather in the very first episode that we had done, but I truly, from what I know about him, truly believe that he didn't act with ego. I don't believe he operated out of ego. I just thought he looked at like what had to be done and the job at hand. I'm not going to lie. I don't know that Trump is as altruistic, perhaps. Like he absolutely has ego in it, right? And even the idea of, which I don't fault him for this, but going, look, you F around and find out with us in the United States and freedom, here's what happened, and putting everybody on notice. So I'm not mad at that. But all that to say, how do you kind of draw a line? And even if there is ego involved, is it a problem? And when does it become a problem? You know what I mean? Like when is it like, okay, this is sure there's some ego, but it's for the greater good. Maybe it's not a bad thing so much. Like where do you lie on that and when that comes into the picture?
Yes. Uh, I do not believe that there's any leader in the world worth his salt or her salt that does not involve themselves with a certain magnificent ego. Ego is not a detrimental force. Ego, it actually is what builds oftentimes the leader to be able to persist and withstand the attacks that are constant against the visible leadership in our lives, whether it be jealousies, whether it be assassination attempts, whether it be 97 times that they dragged Donald Trump into court under frivolous excuses, whether it be even the fact that he had to defend his very own freedom against, ill, misguided, literally diseased and crazy democratic, liberals who wanted to put him in jail to prevent him from being president, fully knowing that the American people wanted him to be president again. So I think ego has a good place. And if it's used justly, just like war, It's a very beneficial tool in the arsenal of democracy.
Like you're saying, if ego is part of the vehicle to get kind of get things done or to liberate it for the greater good, well, that's just maybe part of the equation. Right, right, right. I have an ego as well. We all have egos. I have, a strong one, which I'm trying to put in check. But no, but I get it. I'll be honest with you, and I really want your take on this. When I first heard about this, again, I'm a Jewish woman. I'll be transparent. As glad as I was to hear this because it had to happen, the first thing that went through my mind was great. I see it online every day. There is so much anti-Semitism just running rampant. Perfect. This is going to give those people, they already say that we are bent at the knee for Israel. We do Israel's bidding. Trump and his whole administration is just run by Netanyahu and bought out and all this, and they're just puppets. And I was like, great. This is just going to add fuel to that fire and just drive up, that whole sentiment even more. What do you make of that?
Mm. Well, obviously, one of the things that history has taught us is that anti-Semitism does not need an excuse in order to raise its ugly head. It's always present
So
at the
true.
slightest provocation. I have people who spoke to me because I just come back from the Middle East on the last flight out before the closing of the airspace out of Riyadh, where I advised both King Salman and the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Al Saud bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. And they understood that this is the time to not, at any cost, side with the forces, even within their own country, the Qatifis and the Shia minority or majority, even in the east of Saudi Arabia. They should never allow any doubt to take away the power of the peace they made with Israel through the Abraham Accords that they were signed earlier in the last year. So I think the wisdom of the Saudi leadership should be followed by the whole Arabic world, because what Iran is doing by bombing all these Arab nations around the Persian Gulf is to try to sow doubt and dispersal in order to break them apart from the common resolve of the Gulf Cooperation Council and the Arab states to stand against the dictators of Iran and to give the people of Iran a chance at liberation, a
Mm.
chance at determining their own fate without those people who want to bring the end of the world to justify their darkness that resides within their heart, their evil that resides within their mind. And certainly, they want to spread hellfire in the whole world with
Yeah.
nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and we've discussed this before. In fact, I don't know, but maybe Mr. Trump got a wind of our little program here because we discussed this a couple weeks ago, and what do you know? But something I
I,
don't know if. Oh, go ahead.
I send it to him in his residence close to where you are. I hope he saw it, carefully, and he understood that we represent, the wisdom of America. And when we can advise, the leadership of America and Saudi Arabia, I think nobody can stand on the way of this type of necessary,
Yeah.
just, and moral war of limited duration. But if we can just unleash the forces of the democratic people who live and suffer within Iran today, we've done everything that's good, and Donald Trump deserves the Peace Prize. He's not a warmonger. He's just liberating people, especially the women.
Hmm. Well, we'll see because the Peace Prize organization in and of itself is arguably corrupt in how they go about things. So, we'll see about that. I'd like to see it happen, but but like everything, some of the waters have been so muddled, unfortunately. But I don't know if you've witnessed this, but and I've witnessed this back since October 7th, unfortunately. But how There's been such an Americanized history lens put on the Middle East when one has nothing to do with the other. It's become this thing, especially I've noticed, right? We saw it with like college kids and protests, globalize the Intifada when they really have no idea what this means. And
Mhm.
it's like they've put, Jews and Americans at just this umbrella, as the oppressors, whereas, Muslims or Gazans or, whoever are the oppressed. And it's really caught, and this is not me being Islamophobic, anything, like be whatever, whoever. Um, but it's caused, especially in the States, and I've noticed among youth, like a cheering on and advocacy and spread of Islam in that way, in a way that, again, if in a way that's they don't really know what they're fighting for, right? How do you
Right,
reconcile that?
right, right. Your observation is very correct. And actually, we should never, never, ever dismiss the young people because the young people, even misguided, even in their own folly, they do represent the future. So, how
Yeah,
do you win them back?
right.
Argument, argument, argument. And the most important argument in this equation is that the guardians of the Islamic faith, the guardians of the two mosques, the most sacred place for all Islam, Mecca and Medina, the King Salman and the Crown Prince MBS, they made peace with Israel in the first time in history. And that peace accord, the Abrahamic Accord, is what causes the strength of Israel and the strength of Saudi Arabia, buttressed by the strength of these United States, to be able to dismiss the Ayatollah and cause him to return to the devil from where he came in the first place. And that's a beautiful thing because nobody can say Islamic or not Islamic, Muslim or Christian, that when the guardians of the holiest temples of the Islamic religion, the place of the birth of Muhammad, Mecca, the place into which he prayed, and the Kaaba, and every Muslim person has to go there for the Hajj or the Ulfa. And of course, Medina, the place where he gained his powers, they cannot be dismissed as saying that we are one with Israel, we are one with the United States, and we bless the actions taken against the Ayatollah and that dictatorial regime. So that should put end to every argument.
What happens now? Because that's the other thing, right? I think that these people don't realize, again, with what radical extreme jihadists, Islam is like what they even stand for, but also all the proxies that, through Iran, right? Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. Um, what happens now, do you think? All
Yes.
the legs of the spider, if you will.
I happen to have some prophetic insight. I just forgot to put, my special diamond head over here to tell you. But for my prophetic
Yes,
flow,
exactly.
I can only tell you, without all the necessary equipment to behave like a prophet, I can say that first of all, there is no prophet in their own land and in their own time. So whatever is the outcome of our wisdom is not prophetic, but it is suggestive. And what happens now is that once the head of the snake has been cut off, the eggs of the serpent and the little tiny little snakes, they are all hurrying to hide under the nearest rock pile. We will have nothing to fear from the little baby snakes because the head of the big snake, the mother snake,
Hmm.
the Iranian regime, has terminally been cut off.
Hmm. Lastly, here, and this is a little bit of a twofold. You've been spending some time out in the Middle East, I believe, and you've been having conversations with very influential leaders. So, you know, to kind of have us go out here, what are those conversations like? How are you, advising them? Where are you? Tell us about your experience. And kind of as a last, this is like, again, ending on a twofold, but given that this is such a divisive issue, what would your grandfather, Winston Churchill, do about that? If it was his state, he sees his base, divided over this, takes this action. How do we then come together? How does he mobilize people around this. So kind of big picture, your experience
Yes,
in big picture.
yes. In my experience speaking with the leaders of the Arabic world, and of course, speaking with the leaders of America, I found that the best course of action is the course of flow to the places that there is no resistance. It is natural for all the people of Persia and the surrounding countries that has suffered over 5 decades of this influence of the terrorist leadership of Tehran to all of a sudden find themselves liberated,
Yeah.
but they do not know yet what that means because they've been in prison for so long
Right,
that
right.
they are failing in the beginning to not be startled by this newfangled thing that's called liberty. So give them time. We have to give them time and support them, not run away and pretend, nothing happened. We are not an overnight sensation. We are going to be behind the Persian people for a long time, if necessary, forever, to guide them along the way towards a path of democracy. They
Mm.
have memories. They have had a measure of freedom before, far
Mm-hmm.
greater than what they've experienced in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And Israel, for one, is willing to support them on their path to liberation. Saudi Arabia is willing to support them on their path of liberation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But most importantly, America is
Yeah.
willing to support them on the path of liberation. And most importantly, democracy building. That's what the people want. Self-determination after half a century of darkness.
Well, I can't wait to see it happen. And maybe more of our prophecies here, like you said, with our crystal balls, however you will come true sooner than later. And again, lastly, what do you think your grandfather, Winston Churchill, would do? Say he's in Trump's shoes and he made this decision and it's very much divided his base. Kind of last words on again how he would, what he would, what would he do from there?
What I would suggest to Donald Trump to learn from Winston Churchill that he happens to have a statuette of him, sitting next to him in the Oval Office, at least the head of Winston, whispering in his ear for the better angels of his heart. Donald, pay attention. This is a time where victory, victory, victory at any cost matters more than anything else in life. And that's what I wanted to impart upon Donald Trump, our good president today. Victory, victory, victory at any cost. For without victory, there is no life.
Mm,
And God bless you. Thank you
you
for
as well.
hearing me
Yeah.
and supporting me.
If we've learned, absolutely, it's mutual in the name of democracy. And as we've learned, through these leaders, no one wins by playing it safe, right? So to your point about victory, and hopefully next time we reconvene here on What Would Churchill Do, we will see even more great things unfold. And we'll be here to discuss it. So thank you so much. So fascinating to pick your brain, given the generations on what we're living through right now. And until next time.
Thank you and God bless you. And remember, victory, victory, victory at any cost. For without victory, there can be no survival.
What
Bye
he
bye.
said, you heard the man.